Maniba, I can't see the participant list. If they have some questions on the chat box, please tell me.
Definitely, sir. I'll take care of that. Please go ahead. Thank you, sir.
Live started, sir.
Started. Okay. Good evening, participants. Thank you for joining this course. We have our live interactive session now. The course title is Literature and Life. In this presentation, we will see the relationship between literature and life. First, we will answer this question, what is literature? Then see some of the functions of literature. We will try to understand the concept of representation of life. In literature, what we have is a representation of life. And also, we use this medium of language. So language is also represented. One of the most important aspects of any society is power. So power between people, that is also represented. Then we will consider the questions of life, death, some serious themes in literature like the difference between appearance and reality. We will have some examples from Shakespeare, the Elizabethan playwright, Charles Dickens, the 19th century novelist, and Emily Dickinson, again, a 19th century American poet. After this, we will consider the question, what is life? Particularly, we will think about the human life. All right, now we have evolved ourselves into human beings. But what is after us? After human beings, what is the next stage of evolution? We will consider that question as well. Then we will consolidate the functions of literature and life. Finally, we will look at the way in which we have organized the course. Remember, this is a 12-week course. That means we have materials for 12 weeks. We have some topics for each of these 12 weeks. We will look into them. And then finally conclude our lecture today. Let's begin with a working definition of literature. You must have seen this working definition of literature in the first week's videos. I have come up with this definition from my own experience of reading literature, understanding literature. Literature is an imaginative expression of an experience, both subjective and objective, in a structured form through a creative use of both available and invented languages, exploiting and enriching the cultural resources of a society. Remember, we are human beings. We live in a society. We use a language. We have some imaginative power. We have some thinking power, which is unique to human beings. We use our own experiences, personal experiences, or the experiences of others, imagine or real. We use them, and we also create some structures and present our view of life in the form of stories, poems, dramas, novels, epics, and so many other kinds of literary forms that we have. What we need to understand from this working definition is certain key words like expression, that is an expression in language, experience, individual or collective experience, personal or derived experience, structure or form. When we think about structure or form, we have to consider both linguistic structure and literary structure. Language is common to all forms of literature, but drama has one kind of form, poetry has another kind of form, novel has one more kind of form. So we need to understand the structure or form from different angles. Especially, we have to understand how creative writers use language. Remember, we keep on mentioning that idea that it is a creative expression, imaginative expression, or imaginative writing. That imagination is made possible further through linguistic possibilities. We can use words in any number of combinations and create new kinds of pictures for ourselves. We also mentioned about culture, our society. There is no society without any kind of culture. So when we say that we live in a culture or in a society, we have certain values and visions. These common values and visions give us some sense of meaning for our life. When we participate in the social processes, in the economics, political, educational, institutional processes, we enrich our understanding of our life. We become better personalities. We have scope for improving our own sense of humanity. That is where we find literature is very useful to us. We can create our own literature, or we can read the literature given to us by our predecessors, our past masters, and we can understand humanity and ourselves better through literature. So with this working definition, we will move on to consider other kinds of definitions. Remember, our course is called Literature and Life. So we need to understand life and also literature. Briefly, we will try to see what life is according to the etymological dictionary. Life means a body in fire, burning to exist. Remember, our body is like a machine, an engine, which burns our carbohydrate, our energy. It is burnt in our body, and there is a mechanism that happens. Life means body in fire. There is some kind of embodiment. There is a shape. And this shape of the body, when it reaches the realm of literature, has something to do with the dream, the Indian dream or the American dream. We express that dream through language, and that language has a meaning connected with the tongue. We say mother tongue. We use a tongue to speak, and we have writing through hand, so we have handwriting. Now, we can ask that question, why is the concept of mother hand is missing from us? We can ask that question. We also have literature. Literature, please remember, is a written form. We can also have oral form. Initially, we had oral literature, but we have evolved into a written literature form, and today we have digital form of literature as well. Now, we have another question. What is the equivalent of embodiment in literature? Embodiment in life is our body in fire. What is that embodiment in literature? There is a fire in literature. That there is a spirit in literature. That fire is all asking questions about the meaning of life. What is this life for me? What kind of life do I live? So critics, especially creative writers, they burn with some kind of questions in themselves, try to find the answers and write novels, stories, poems. And when they write, when they complete their writing, they have a sense of relief from a kind of quest in them, a search for some kind of meaning in them. That search may temporarily stop. But really great writers keep on asking this question till their death. Let's move further and understand what literature is from two different writers. One is W.H. Hudson, another is R. Taylor. Literature is fundamentally an expression of life through the medium of language. we always have to remember there is no literature without language, and there is no language and literature without life. Our human life, particularly, animals may have a non-verbal kind of language, but we are endowed with, or we have endowed ourselves with a human language like English or Hindi or Tamil or Telugu or Malayalam, any kind of language that is used by human beings. So literature is an expression of life through the medium of language. To understand literature, we have to understand language. To understand life, we have to understand language and literature. That's why we have this course. Let's see one more definition from the book, Understanding the Elements of Literature. Literature, like other arts, human beings can create arts or art forms. Remember, human beings have always been interested in becoming creators. And all these creations appear in the form of arts like painting, sculpture, some kind of building, or literary pieces, music, songs. These are literary forms or fine arts. We human beings want to express ourselves, discover what we are capable of, to understand life, and then share our understanding with the rest of the world. Literature, like other arts, is essentially an imaginative act. Remember, literature is made up of letters, ABCD letters or words, but this is made up of letters through an imaginative action. That is an act of the writer's imagination. Remember, this happens in our sensory perception. When we perceive the world, we select, we order, we interpret. When we see the sunset or the sunrise or the moon or the waves in the roaring sea, we select some inputs, sound or pictures, we select some inputs, then arrange the inputs in some particular order, and then interpret that input in our own way. That is depending on the kind of experience of life that we have. Positive experience of life, negative experience of life will result in different kinds of attitude to life or outlook on life. That's where we have romantic literature or satirical literature or negative form of literature, utopian literature or dystopian literature, to have a higher view of life or to understand the lower forms of life. In the case of literature, words are the medium of expression, and it makes little difference whether those words are recorded in the living memory of a people or by some mechanical means such as writing, sound recording, etc. Today, we have evolved in such a way that we can, instead of writing, tell our stories and record and publish them in audio forms. In fact, some of the old novels, dramatic literature, even epics, they are all available in audio form now. Somebody reads or recites, enacts, performs, and these recitations and performances are available to us in audio forms. We can listen as well. Let's further inquire into the definition of literature. We understood earlier that literature is an art like any other art. It is a creative art, an imaginative act. Now, what does this imagination involve? What do we do with our imagination? What do we do in our art forms? All art is the expression of life in forms of truth and beauty. When we look at a piece of sculpture, painting, architecture, what do we feel? We feel that there is some truth of life, there is some beauty, whether it is a temple, whether it is a huge building, palace, or fort, whatever it is, a statue, whatever it is, we feel there is a sense of beauty and also there is a sense of truth in it. That's why we are attracted to such huge monumental works of art. Rather, it is a reflection of some truth and beauty. What does a piece of art do? It reflects some sense of truth, some sense of beauty, which are in the world. But which remain unnoticed until brought to our attention by sensitive human soul. All of us can see the world, but all of us cannot see everything in the world. Some we can see, some we may not be able to see at all. So when we read the writings of writers, when we look at the pictures, paintings, when we listen to the songs of writers or some musicians, we understand the world through their eyes, through their ears, through their mind. And it's a kind of experience which we will miss otherwise if we don't get in touch with art forms. Literature is the art that expresses life in words. Remember, we have been telling about the close relationship between literature and language. Language is all about words that appeal to our sense of the beautiful. So, a sculpture is created by a sculptor in the form of some wood or some stone or some iron or gold, some kind of material. But an artist in words creates such a structure in words, and he or she, the artist in literature, also gives a sense of the beautiful. Broadly, literature simply means the records of the race, including all its history and the sciences, as well as its poems and novels. We have to understand that all our writings in the beginning, they were all in the form of poetry. Whether we look at religion, science, philosophy, natural science, anything, history, anything, everything was in the form of poetry. Poetry is something close to our heart. So we can say specifically, literature is the artistic record of life. When we go to a hospital, we have a medical history for ourselves. And when we come to a novel about a patient or about a doctor, we will have an artistic record of life in a medical hospital or in an office where workers meet and discuss their issues, or in a family, or in a government setup, anywhere it may be, we have some kind of record of life. Now, let's move on to discuss the topic function of literature. What does literature do? Literature uses words. It expresses life or represents life. What more does it do? Apart from representing life, representing truth and beauty, let's have some more understanding of literature for us. Literature is an expression of life in words of truth and beauty. It is a written record of man's spirit, the spirit of human beings, of his thoughts, emotions, aspirations. We remember we are all human beings full of emotions. We have some ambitions. We have some desires, dreams. All these ideas find a way into literature. It is a history, and the only history of the human soul. Without literature, we cannot understand human beings much. Today, we have the medium of film, but before films came, the only way in which we could understand our soul is literature. Look at any great literature, Milton's epic poems, or Homer's epic poems, or French novels like Flaubert's Madame Bovary, or any kind of writing, whether it is drama, Shakespearean drama, 16th century drama, or 20th century drama. To get into the soul of human beings, we have one medium, that is literature. It is characterized by its artistic, suggestive, and permanent qualities. Literature records life, and it has certain qualities. They are called artistic qualities, suggestive qualities, and permanent qualities. Remember, some literary pieces always pass the test of time. They come back to us again and again. We keep on reading them. So how do these literary pieces written in 14th century England, or 16th century England, or 17th century America, or 20th century India, how do these literary pieces come back to us again and again? We have two tests. One is called universal interest, another is called personal style. Most of these great literary pieces have some universal interest. When you read any kind of literature, you will find that there is a family story. There is a father, there is a mother, there is a son or daughter. It starts from the Bible. It starts from our Mahabharata or Ramayana. Anywhere we will find human beings in a family. So some kind of conflict arises, and how these conflicts are resolved is what the story is all about. Sometimes, particularly in the 20th and 21st century, we will find that many of these issues have become so complex that they are not resolvable at all. We are unable to solve those problems because we are growing into such a level that we are making our life more and more complicated. Another reason is some individual writers have a personal style. They are able to use language in such a way, in such a memorable way, in a perspective or perceptive way. They are able to help us to see life through words. They use words as a lens to show the beauty, the horror, the misery, the goodness, the suffering, the joy, everything about life. The object of literature, aside from the delight it gives, remember, when we read literature, we feel happy. Some kind of joy comes into us, is to know man. How do you want, if you want to know human beings, how do we know about human beings? We have to read literature, particularly the soul of man. What is hidden in the recesses of the unconscious mind of human beings, the collective consciousness of the human beings? How do we know? Only through literature we can understand. And since it preserves to the race the ideals upon which all our civilization is founded, look at any country. Every country which has a great civilization will have its own epic form, epic poetry, which would tell us the story of how a country established itself. Bharata, Rome, Virgil's Aeneid. So we will have some story to tell us how a great country was formed. And these countries are formed with some great ideals. It is one of the most important and delightful subjects that can occupy the human mind. We feel immensely happy. Recently, we had a book fair in Chennai, and every year I have been visiting this book fair. This year also, I found that Ponniyin Selvan is a novel in Tamil, which people buy even today. People may not have that reading habit, but that particular novel, Ponniyin Selvan, attracts huge readership. And because it tells us the story of Tamil people. And every literature, every language will have its own stories about the culture, about the society. And such stories are delightfully told. And people love to read, to know about themselves and about their history, about their culture. Now, we said literature is a representation of life, but we have something more as well. Can literature represent life completely? We have asked this question, and some critics say it is a complicated business. According to Raymond Williams, literature is a difficult word in part because its conventional meaning appears at first sight so simple. Literature, words or letters representing the spirit of human beings, it looks simple, but it is complicated. What are those complications? Let's see them. Mimesis is a word to refer to representation. It can mean imitation. Literature is a kind of imitation of life. What human beings think, do, feel, act, all those things are presented in literature. So we can have the idea of representation as well. That is how we have realistic literature. When we can understand the culture, the society, the politics, the religion of a country. For example, Chaucer's Canterbury Tales is to a large extent realistic. It tells us about the history of those people at that time. It gives a slice of life. It may not show everything to us, but some slices of life, some dimensions of life, we will come to know. From those slices, we can have a holistic understanding of a society. So, from external realism, description of the objects, description of the external world, slowly we moved on to social realism about society, particularly economic conflicts between people. And then we moved on to psychological realism. What happens in the mind of, in the depth of the human mind? We have come to psychological realism as well. But after this, after the 19th century realistic novels, even in the early 20th century, we had some realistic novel. Even in 21st century, we have some realistic novels and realistic literature. But most of the authors have now come to the understanding that literature, representing life through literature, is not that easy. Because when we talk about life in literature through words, we talk more about the way of representing, or the way of using language, or the nature of language itself becomes the subject of representation. That is where we have the counter concept of anti-mimesis, that is non-representation. That means literature does not refer to any external world, but it refers to the world created in itself. So we have to understand literature created in a language is a text, that is a textual world, but it doesn't have anything to do with the realistic world, the real world outside the text. That is where certain words are used, like self-critical. Literature is self-critical, literature is self-referential, literature is self-reflexive. It doesn't have anything to do with the world outside. This kind of concept has become popular, especially after structuralist view of language. Language is differential. It doesn't refer to external world. Such ideas are prominent in modernist literature and postmodernist literature. In spite of this understanding, complex understanding of representation, writers still continue to represent life as it is. We also have something more specifically when it comes to language. We have a concept called discourse. What literature represents is not just an imitation of life. It is not just about a world on its own without having reference to the outside world. It talks about power structures in our human society. Remember, when we are in a society, some people have more power than some others. That's why George Orwell said, all are equal, but some are more equal, in his famous novel, Animal Farm. So when some people are more equal, there is a disparity in sharing of power. Some people have more power, that is, they are hegemonic, they try to exploit others, suppress others, so that those few who are in the top structure of the society, they will have more benefits. And they will, to retain their own power structure, to retain their own position, they will use some ideology to keep their power. It's not that a government will use police force to control people and ask them to remain in the lower level of the society, say the lower level, middle level, and upper level. The people in the upper classes, they will try to control all other sections of the society through ideology, ideological forms like education, religion, and economic structure, or political structure. We have such problems represented in novels like Twain's Huckleberry Finn. What we have in this novel is the racial question, the racial disparity between the whites and the blacks. Similarly, we have the economic class differences between upper class and lower class in Dickens's novel, Charles Dickens's novel, Hard Times. We also have some problem of gender. Remember this patriarchy and matriarchy, the difference between males and male and female. The female people, that is women, have always been considered to be lower than male or men. And that idea has been questioned now. Feminist criticism or feminist readership has evolved into a great level today to question all forms of ideological structural underpinnings, to suggest that women are equal or women can play better role than what men can do. We have now three questions. Questions about life, questions about literature. What literature does, we can understand from this. Literature does not merely state or describe life, it also questions life. Now, when you consider these questions, we have to ask two questions. The questions raised by literature, are they simple questions or are they simply questions? There is a lot of difference between simple questions and simply questions. Simply questions, we don't consider the answer seriously. Simple questions, we don't think them seriously. We don't think about them seriously. There are many other dimensions to these questions. There are some complexities which we need to understand. We have a very interesting question from Samuel Beckett's play, Waiting for Godot, in Act 2. Vladimir asks Estragon in this play, what are we doing here? That is a question. All human beings on this earth, what are we doing here? Are we causing this climate problem? Are we creating this environmental problem? Are we creating so many other problems that we have in our country or in the world? That's a big question. What are we doing here? That is a question. Now, the answer given is nothing. If we are doing nothing, then why do we have so many problems? Then simple question again, why are we here? If we don't have anything to do, then why are we here? That's why human beings are pressurized by this question. Why am I here? What am I doing here? So something to do with purpose or meaning. We are driven by this quest for meaning in our life. Milton has an answer for this question. They also serve who stand and wait. The fact that we live here, we wait upon something, we stand, we wait for our chance to answer something, to do something. That is what we have in Milton's poem On His Blindness. But we are not satisfied with the answers given to us by other writers or other philosophers. We want to find out the answers ourselves. That's why every human being will keep on asking questions. One doesn't have to be educated to ask questions. Anyone born as a human being with some thinking power, with a level of language, will ask this question: why am I born here? What am I going to do in this life? What am I going to do after my death? And how can I live my life better? How can I live my life without causing harm to others? So many questions are raised by human beings and we don't have simple answers for them. The life is very complex and we have to find our own way in our life. And for that negotiation of life, literature is a wonderful tool. We can read, understand how many characters negotiate their way through life. Now let's go to the next question that we have, one of the greatest questions in literature, in English literature particularly, from Shakespeare's Hamlet. This is one of the most famous lines. To be or not to be, that is a question. To live or not to live, to do or to think. This is a question raised by Hamlet in the play Hamlet. And writers, particularly directors, have represented or directed this play with so many variations. How do we hear or read the expression to be or not to be or not to be, to be or not to be, some kind of modulation of voice. The actors, when they deliver this question on the stage for the audience, they raise so many questions in the minds of audience. Does the utterance deal with an either or option? Look at this. Do we have an either or option in our life? We follow this or follow that. That's one of the problems in our life. Can we have a right or wrong answer in our life? Can we find something good or bad in our life? But we know that we have a combination of all these things. Finer shades are there, and we have to find out where we are, at what time. We have to understand whether we are good or bad, whether we take right decisions or wrong decisions. We have to understand ourselves to live or to commit suicide. Remember Hamlet, though he fought a battle and died, he might have wished to die. He didn't want to take the responsibility for his country. So you could have some interpretation like that. However, we need to understand Hamlet was aware of the problem of words. When Polonius, a minister, asks Hamlet, "What do you see, my lord?" Hamlet replies, "Words, words, words, words." Don't we have anything more than words? These words don't have any meaning for me. What is the real meaning? Love or affection or kingship or service to society? What is this all about? Now, when we question life like this, we have problems. Is this desire for understanding a kind of self-destruction? When we want to know more and more, we cannot find the real meaning. We'll go mad. That's where we have the operation of Freud's idea that we have a death drive in us. That death drive, if we are operated by that, then we will commit suicide or we may meet with our end on our own. Now we have to ask ourselves a question. A human being may be by this kind of question of life, whereas animals may have or may not have. We don't have any record of their thinking. But we can ask this question because we are human beings. Does an animal plan killing itself or even another animal for nothing? How does literature help us understand our own self-destructive nature? I have taught this course to our IIT Madras students. Quite a few, at least a handful of students have expressed their feeling that this course helped them to navigate their life in their difficult moments of their life, particularly those students who had some kind of depression or anxiety. They were able to overcome those difficult feelings by attending this course, by reading more about the understanding of oneself through literature. We have another question here, a basic question, which is actually a problem in the whole world. A hungry child asked for more food, more gruel in Dickinson's novel Oliver Twist. "Please, sir, I want some more." Oliver Twist asks for a little more gruel. Now, this request for something more to fulfill his own hunger, this question is problematic. Why don't you give me some more? I'm hungry. I'm not satisfied yet. Please give me some more. Now, when a poor boy, an orphan, asks this question, it can challenge people in power, particularly those people who want to exploit some government schemes of subsidy and all that for orphanages. Now, this leads to a question: who is a donor? Who is a donee? What is the relationship between the two? What is the whole question of charity or welfare measure in a government scheme? Can the provider or a mediator of charity be questioned? We have many NGOs helping poor people. They may collect money from some donors and serve people. But when they exploit that kind of opportunity for their own self-growth, some people may ask a question. So now we have a question. Can a question invite punishment, even death? Asking for food, some people can go to hell or prison, or they can even meet with their death. So this question, I want some more, can I have some more food? That question is a dangerous question, as presented by Charles Dickens in his novel. Why should a child suffer anywhere in the world? That's any humanitarian or any humanist in the world, one who thinks about his fellow human beings, will ask this: why should human beings suffer anywhere in the world? We will not like to have war. We will not like to have any kind of suffering for human beings anywhere in the world. That's why only a person who suffered in his life could understand the sufferings of others. Tamil Nadu had a great leader called K. Kamaraj. He saw the sufferings of young children who did not go to school, who could not attend school because they did not have midday meal. So he came out with a scheme to provide midday meal in the school, thinking that at least to get food, some children would attend school. And he was quite successful in his effort. Parents agreed to send the children to school because they would be able to get some food. And with that, they would also get some education. So when a human being like Kamaraj, a political leader, thinks about the sufferings of people, he can put something into action to help society. What can a literary writer do? He can only raise a question, like Charles Dickens. He can only raise a question and write an imaginative story about Oliver Twist and make that character a memorable character, an immortal character. Everyone who reads fiction, particularly British fiction, would be able to remember Oliver Twist. Now we have the 19th century poet Dickinson, Emily Dickinson. She has a poem and she also has a question. And it's a very interesting question, disturbing question. She calls herself, I am nobody. She describes herself, I am nobody. But she doesn't stop with that. She addresses her listener, who are you? Are you nobody too? Are you nobody? Are you nobody too? So this nobody or somebody, that's a big question. She is an enigmatic poet. She can't be easily understood. She always writes poems with riddles. Her affirmation is disturbing. She asks that question. That the affirmation is a question. I have phrased it like this: why am I a nobody? When somebody is somebody, why am I a nobody? Now, the speaker, is it the poet, a woman poet? Who is this nobody? If there is anybody called two, who is that two? Who is the addressee? Who is the listener? Is it the 19th century American male or female? Or is it the 21st century male or female? A black one or a white one? Or a rich one or a poor one? We have such questions and we don't have answers. What do these capitalizations and dashes do in the poem? Remember, Emily Dickinson is known for use of capital letters in her poems and also dashes. Now we have one more question. Is the poet like a chameleon without any self, as John Keats imagined in his concept of negative capability? A poet or a writer, a dramatist, a novelist, everyone takes on different roles. The writer is like a chameleon. When a male writer writes about a woman, he or he becomes a woman. So when a writer, an adult writer, an aged writer writes about a child, he becomes a child. So they play different roles. They imaginatively travel different kinds of worlds about the thoughts, feelings, sufferings, joys of various kinds of characters, black or white or rich or poor, upper class, lower class, whatever kind of race they may belong to, whatever class they may belong to, whatever the kind of gender they may belong to, these writers adopt different kinds of persona and play different roles and write about various kinds of experiences. Now we come to the second important question: what is life? Although we have seen the Etymological dictionary definition, life is a body in fire. Literature is also a body, a spirit in fire. We have organic life. We also have inorganic life, that is matter actually. We have plants and animals. Organic life particularly has the capacity for being born. It can grow, it can reproduce itself. Even one celled amoeba can reproduce itself. It can form groups. It can different groups. It can evolve into higher levels, and the life from that one celled amoeba to human beings, they can grow and die as well. Now, the question is, what is this life? Does life have a purpose? Is there any purpose? That's a big question. We don't have any answer. It may be yes or it may be no. If we believe, if we are positive, we may believe that we have a purpose. My purpose of being born in this world is to become a teacher and teach literature. One more step. In my stage, used to teach online. I have come here and you have become online students. So if we believe in that positive attitude to life, we may believe that there is some purpose. But if you don't believe that there is no purpose, then we don't have any purpose at all. Now, there are two attitudes. One is positive, another is negative. That positive attitude to life touches upon the idea of purposiveness, and the negative attitude to life touches upon randomness. We just accidentally became human beings. We just accidentally became teachers and students. We just accidentally became somebody in this world. So there is a design in life. There is no design at all. Everything is a chance. It's a matter of chance. We have a simple question here now. What is the purpose of a basil plant, a banyan tree, an ant, an elephant, a man in Ethiopia or Ukraine or Russia now, a woman in India or Sri Lanka or Pakistan, a student in IIT Madras or some Pondicherry University or Delhi University, a teacher in a rural college or a student in a metropolitan city or a village. What is the purpose of these individuals? We may not have any specific answer. It depends on what we believe, whether we are able to reach the next stage, whether we are able to attain some kind of achievement in our life. But one thing that we can say is life is an organization of organizations, like the internet. The internet we have formed based on our own human brain. The computer system is based on our own brain. So we impose the human quality on the world. That is how we understand. We understand everything through our human perception. It is good and it is also bad. It is good when we understand the world right. It is bad when we cause some nuisance to the world, like environmental degradation and all that. Now let's come to the human life. We are born, we grow, and we die. Now we have artificial birth. Remember, infertility clinics are abundant in many cities today. We create life, and we also have growth, artificial growth in our life. We have all kinds of supplements, health supplements and all that. We also die. Remember, during this corona time, people were kept on ventilators. They were able to live longer, or they were able to die soon, depending on the availability of ventilators. We have so many questions here. Why was I born? Why do I die? Who am I? Why am I doing what I am doing? Why do people the way they do? Why do we have disparity between people? One is rich, another is poor. One has all privileges, another doesn't have. Why? Why do we have both fasting and feasting? On the one hand, we have parties. People spend money lavishly for some functions, whereas on the other hand, people don't have anything to eat, even to drink water, they don't have that facility. Why is this kind of disparity? Did God design this in this way? Or is it designed naturally like this? Or is it artificially created? Or is it created by human beings ourselves? After human beings, after our life, where are we going to be? What will happen to us next? Remember, we have our intelligence. We have grown to this level in 21st century because of our intelligence, our brain. Now, we are not happy with our own brain. We have created artificial intelligence. Everything is controlled by artificial intelligence today. We acquire more and more power, and every data is collected, everything is centralized. Now we can control people, we can control the economy of a country, we can control the military power of a country, we can control the educational system of a country. Everything we can control. When we control, we can support and also exploit. We can nurture, we can also destroy. What do we do with this? Now I have a question. We were not able to help ourselves much with our multiple thinking. We can think in many ways, but this computer, artificial intelligence, it can think only in binary ways. Yes or no, 0 and 1. That's what a computer can do. But we human beings can think in different ways. We can think in terms of 1, 0, 2, 3, 4, 5, and n number we can think. Similarly, we can think yes, no, yes plus no. We can think yes one time, no another time. We can do many, many things. With our multiple thinking, we have not been able to help much. But what are we going to do with this binary thinking? Will it lead to some kind of catastrophe? Remember this either or option. Life is certainly not an either or option. Either or option is all about this binary thinking. Our philosophers, our literary thinkers have given us that clear idea. Binary option or a binary opposition is not a solution to our life. Now we come to the functions of literature and life. What does literature do? Literature records, creates, and recreates life in multiple ways and many different forms. Many different forms like poetry, drama, novel, and all that. Life assembles and reassembles literature as well as provides an example of past, present, and future. Remember, life or literature is all about we are born in the world in a particular time, in a particular space. So we are subject to time and space. So we think about the past, we think about the present, and we also think about the future. We can create what is not there yet. That's where we have wonderful science fiction in the world. Remember, literature is a card, like our power card. It is also a suicide card. Literature can give us power. It can take the power from us as well. How do we use it? That is the whole question. How do we use literature? To help ourselves or to harm ourselves? When it comes to literature, we have to realize that life is a dark tunnel, constantly driving us to find light at the end of the tunnel. We are always going through some tunnel. We want to find out some light. What is that light? Where is that light? Will that light be permanent forever? That's why we have the journey in the life by looking at the star in the sky as a guide for us. Both literature and life use language creatively and excitingly. Even when we don't write literature, we use language creatively. Just look at the children when they learn language, how they are using language creatively. Both search for meaning and purpose. In life and also in literature, real life characters or imaginary characters, they search for some kind of meaning or purpose. But then in literature and also in life, commerce, money, wealth, acquisition, greed, this has corrupted literature and life, and thus our imagination also. Today, our imagination is also corrupted, and there is no good spirit. Then how can we have our imagination, true imagination, good, pure imagination? We don't have today. It all depends on our effort to find out the true source of imagination. Soon, we may have a robotic literature because now we have given that ability to computers to do so many things, including creative writing. We have now computer generated poems, novels, and so we may have some robots which may read robotic literature. We may have some robotic literature specialists also, as we have American literature specialists or Indian literature specialists. Now, the struggle to retain or to refresh our creative imagination, it still continues. This is what every writer does, to get in touch with the true source of imagination, to write about the goodness, the truth, the beauty of life in a language creatively as they can. Now, I have coined one phrase, the right to imagine. We have the question of right to life, right to education. Now, all our literary authors, I think they struggle with this right to imagine. And we as readers also struggle with our right to imagine. We take the help of writers from different countries, written in English, written in other languages. If they are available in our own mother tongue, we read them, and we are thankful to our writers for enabling us to imagine and feel happy with ourselves. How have we organized this course? We have all these topics. We have this introduction. What is literature? What is life? What is the relationship between the two? What is the way in which we are going to study literature, and all that we saw in the first week. We have prose, poetry, drama, and novel in the second week, different elements of literature. Then in the third week, we have 4 authors for essays from Kalam, Bhagat, Chetan Bhagat, R.K. Narayan, Amish Tripathi. And in the fourth week, we have had essays from Orwell, George Orwell, William Zinsser, John Didion, and Virginia Woolf. And in the fifth week, we have poems by 4 authors like Wordsworth, Longfellow, Jervis, and Robert Frost. In the sixth week, we have poems from Emily Dickinson, Glick, Kamala Das, and Sujata Bhatt. And in the seventh week, recently, this week, we have Girish Karnad's play, Tuklak. And in the coming weeks, we will have one-act plays, a novel, and 2 weeks for short stories. And the final week, we will have some discussion. Most likely, we will have some discussion by teachers teaching literature in the local colleges here. And if possible, I will try to have some of our students to make some kind of presentation as part of this NPTEL course as well. With this, we come to the conclusion. We have a summary now. We asked 2 important questions. What is literature and what is life? We try to answer these questions in our own way using some literary sources from different books like Hudson or Rees or Taylor or Long, Williams, Terry Eagleton, and so many other critics. We try to use them. And similarly, we try to use some quotations from various authors like Shakespeare, Charles Dickens, Emily Dickinson, Samuel Beckett, John Milton, and so many authors. We try to get some quotations from them and connect them with the literature and life. We understood that literature is written in language. Language is made up of words, and our life is closely connected with our language and literature. Literature, life, language, all these 3 are interconnected. We human beings always look for some meaning, and our literature has both kinds of meaning, positive meaning and negative meaning. We have romantic literature, that is utopia. We have realistic literature or satirical literature where we have dystopia, that is a bleak world where there is no meaning. We have both, and we understand from our own life. At one time, we may find life meaningful. At another time, we may find that our life has no meaning, particularly when we have the values of trust, love, family, affection, friendship. All those values, human values, do give meaning to us when we cherish those values. When we don't cherish these values, when we destroy these values, when we break our trust when we betray our friends, when we betray our partners, family relations, then we will not have much meaning. At the end of the day, an individual as a human being cannot find much meaning. That's why we have emphasized human relationships throughout the course. In every lecture, we will have some element of human relationship. Trust in human beings is very, very important. So I hope that this course will be very useful to you. If you have some questions, comments, you are welcome to ask me.
That's great, sir.
Yes, please.
Definitely, the learners of this course will get benefited from your lecture today. There is no particular question in both chat box of Zoom as well as in YouTube, but one of our learners has asked for a reference book for function of literature, sir. Yeah,
I have given all these references in the videos. Function of literature, particularly in this presentation, I think that is Long, W.J. Long, English literature. There's
yes, sir.
Yeah, I have given this long reference also here. Any learner, if the learners want to speak, they can do.
Yes, sir.
The chat, there is some message. Can you see that?
No, sir.
I see some number 1, something like that. Any learner, you are welcome to ask any question or share your thoughts. Just you can speak. Anybody willing to speak about the course you are learning?
Dear learners, you can unmute yourself and speak.
Yeah, they can unmute. Yes, that's right. Shall I close? Shall I stop this presentation? Yeah. Now I can see somebody. Yes, Kamalkar, Roshan, Sushma, Sudha. Anybody who wants to say something, they can.
Hello, sir. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Kamalkar.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Actually, I wanted to ask a question about the question paper. It means the exam is going to held.
Yes.
So what will be the format of the examination?
We have uploaded a model question paper in our discussion forum. Did you see that?
Yet not, sir. I will check it.
Please go to the Swayam portal.
Yeah.
You will have an option, model question paper. Click it, you will get it.
Yeah. Sure, sir.
If any difficulty, please raise a question again. I will post it again in our discussion forum.
Yes, sir. One more thing, I mailed you twice, sir, about the inscription, sir.
Yeah. We will work on it, and we'll share the question paper with you in the discussion forum now. At least
sir.
one lecture I will share with you tonight.
Yeah, sure, sir. Okay, sir.
Yes.
Thank you.
Welcome. Anybody else? Roshan, Shushma, Sudha, anybody else who wants to ask anything? Then if you don't have anything to ask, please don't hesitate. Even if the question is somewhat very ordinary, don't feel bad. Remember, life is all about asking questions. Who am I? Who is my father? Who is my mother? Who is my real friend? These are questions for which you will find some kind of answer in literature. Who is a real husband? Who is a real person who cares for you? All those questions you will find answers. Shall we close now then?
Yes, sir. We shall.
Thank you so much for participating in this program now. I did not have any questions from the discussion forum, but I went ahead. Thank you for joining us. We will have one more one more live session in the month of April before your examination. Is that all right, Kamalkar? We will have one more live session. We'll plan it.
Yes, sir. This will be all right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Good day. Bye. Bye.
Bye, sir.
Bye.
Thank you, sir.